What's up, everybody? Fighting Foolishness podcast. Parker and Shay, thank you for joining us.
Hey, y'all.
And I'm just going to do this ask at the beginning. Like, subscribe, share. You know, we're trying to grow the channel. We'd love to have that interaction, the comments, and all the things. And, you know, we just come together here just to talk about stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, right before the podcast, and we're not going to get into this, but we were talking about the Pop the Balloon YouTube channel. We won't. That's all I'm going to say about that, because we just sit here and talk about stuff, but all the time. But ultimately, I think this week, the thing that's actually been on my mind this week is, you know, we're living in a time where everybody thinks they're an expert at something, whether they know what they're talking about or not, and whether it's the vaccine, whether it's health, whether it's history. You know, we've got Trump up there trying to rewrite various things, going to the Smithsonian and start talking about like how various things are inaccurate and shouldn't be portrayed the way that they are. And it's interesting, like, I've been thinking about this a lot this week, because history particularly is actually really complicated, and people forget that history stands for his story.
And it's always written by the victor.
And it is always written by the victor. So there's always another side to the things that happen, where it's like, okay, the victor is not going to write a story that makes them look bad. That's just not even a thing, right? If you won the battle, you're going to tell the story of you being the hero. Mm-hmm. And in America, we're kind of, I want to loosely say, I mean, we're definitely a multicultural society, but there is literally a war against the multiculturalism of the country. And it's to the point where you have people arguing about what history is valid history and whose history is valid. And it's just, I want to use these words like it's an interesting conversation. And honestly, I don't even think it's that interesting of a conversation. I think that all these things are very complicated, and everybody has a voice, everybody has an opinion. And really, when I hear somebody kind of, you know, eschewing certain aspects of the historical record and how it's being portrayed, I'm like, well, you're just eschewing somebody else's experience and arguably somebody else's cultural identity and everything comes along with it, you know. So that's been what's been on my mind this week, you know. And what kind of prompted that was this business with Jillian Michaels on CNN, going there complaining, basically, kind of, she was kind of speaking as a voice of, you know, people are calling her a MAGA influencer. I don't know if she actually is or not. I think she's definitely being presented as that, though. And she basically went on attempting to tell the people that she was upset because white people were characterized poorly in the context of slavery, when in her mind only 2% of the white people at the time owned slaves. Mm. And most of the panel was looking at her like, what are you talking about? And every time that this came up in the conversation, it's like, you're not a historian, so why are you even here to begin with? And I think it's frustrating for people who really don't have that breadth of information to be platformed like that, and even given the opportunity to, you know, really represent what they don't know.
I think that she's just an example of how our society is right now. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't disagree with that. Yeah. I was having a conversation with a coworker today, and she was talking about how we live in St. Louis, how St. Louis is so diverse and segregated at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so you can go to areas that are diverse, yet when you go to these diverse areas and you see a little bit of everybody mixed in, everybody then goes back to their segregated homes. And so, and when I say that, when I've had quite a few conversations with various white people who talk about my family's been poor for generations. Why should I feel guilty for slavery? Things like that. And what I realized, where I've always the voice that I've chosen to speak from was one of understanding. This year I'm less understanding yet. Typically I speak from a voice of understanding, where they're speaking to other white people who feel the same way that they do. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes an echo chamber, and you start to believe that, could it have really been that bad? Maybe black people just didn't want to work. And unfortunately those are things that I have heard.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So I've heard
mind-boggling
and maintained my composure. And that's why
it's infuriating.
At these good 41 years, I'm no longer the compassionate voice. So I'll choose out of the conversation. I'm not talking to you about that, because I don't feel like explaining anymore that in order for slavery to be perpetuated, there had to be a breaking of the psyche of the person who was enslaved. There had to be a taking of the person, because honestly, the only way that slavery works is if you take a person and you transplant them so far away that they cannot easily run back to where they came from. And so, and the people who love them can't come and rescue them. There were so many things that had to happen in order for it to be a monolith. And the thing about 2% of the population owning slaves, that doesn't factor in, while there were slaves, there were white people on the plantation who benefited from being above the slaves who were poor, who worked in the subjugation of the slaves. So they perpetuated the breaking of the psyche.
Well, I was listening to Roland Martin today about this. It's funny because I rarely listen to Roland Martin.
I know, yeah.
But I saw the YouTube video and I clicked on it and I just listened to the whole thing. It was about 30 minutes. It was a good video. There is a guy on there who's a historian who... Well, I don't know. Actually, let me be careful with my terms. I don't know that he was officially a historian, but he did know the history of this specific issue. And he was talking about how that number was actually so skewed, because whenever you're talking about numbers, and this is a lesson for everybody, whenever you're talking about numbers, especially in politics, you've got to dig into where the numbers came from and what they're actually talking about, because numbers are almost always fungible. You can move them around and make them say all kinds of things. And what he said was fascinating. He said that statistic was actually taken sometime in the 1800s, when all of the colonies weren't even present. So America wasn't what we see it as today. It was like there was either 13 or 15 colonies at that time. Mm-hmm. And it didn't account for the families of the slave owners. So really the owners were probably just the white men. Yeah. Who actually owned the slaves. But the second that you add their immediate families that were in the house, that number goes up to 30%.
Yes, because I watched a documentary on, or I started a documentary, and it got so dark so fast, I stopped. It was about the white women who were major players in the slave trade, because as part of their dowries, they came with a plantation
of
slaves. They might not have, and these are people who they might not be the first daughter. So because they're not the first daughter, or because because if they're the only daughter, then they're going to get a lot, so that they make it attractive, so that two powerful families can come together and concentrate that family through another bloodline, because that's the other part of the conversation. The other side of that conversation is that the breeding of enslaved black people was an extension of the breeding of the white people, the white elites. It was very much so about power. It was all about power dynamics and making better and things like this, all to perpetuate names. So it was just talking about how this one woman, when she got married, part of her dowry was 50 slaves, and how her dowry was written was, if her husband died before she did, if she died before her husband, her 50 slaves went to her children instead of going into her husband's number, so that her children continued to have something, a perpetuation. And it was just like, whoa.
Well, and the other thing that isn't really discussed, that's so key to this conversation, because a lot of people like to compare like the transatlantic slave trade to what went on in Europe and has gone on all over the world for as long as we can even comprehend, is that they're just not the same. At all. To call somebody a slave, and I'm not saying that any I don't want to sugarcoat that the slavery was like ideal conditions or anything, but chattel slavery and what was done to Africans as they were ripped from their homes and taken across the Atlantic Ocean into all the islands, all the Americas. Basically, it wasn't just the United States. Mm-hmm. It was all over the Americas. Was something that was uniquely horrific in the practice and implementation, and this went on for centuries. It wasn't just something that a blip in history. It was like this was hundreds of years that this happened. And then even after abolition, Jim Crow laws were the law of the land in America for almost another 100 years before those got overturned. And so, in European countries, which was a much different, you really can't compare it to, because there was a whole different system of government. There were kings and serfs and slaves and things like that. It's an entirely different setup. And when we talk about, and I remember it's very rarely discussed, and this is part of the disadvantage of watering down history, is that you don't really hear or see what it really took to, what was the word you used before?
The psychological.
The
dismantling. Dismantling
what
of the
it really
psyche.
took to dismantle the psyche of humans. Mm-hmm. It's one thing if you have a master and you decide to do what they say to do, but that's not what the transatlantic slave trade was.
It was an erasure. Mm-hmm. It was an erasure.
It was literally chattel slavery is literally an erasure of the identity of that group of people and turning a whole segment of the population, namely Africans, into property. And I think people, when they think of this, they think, we just gave them free room and board and they were made to work for it. I think that's the mentality of a lot of people. And that's just not that's just not the case.
Something I wanted to say in regards to when you said it was over a course of centuries. Harriet Tubman, Madame Curie, she came up with She came up with one of the vaccines. I feel like it's polio. And Ronald Reagan. They were all alive at the same time.
Think about that. Like, that's mind-boggling when you actually think about the fact that these historical figures, and Martin Luther King too.
Yeah, so Martin Luther King would be.
Yeah, and Malcolm X and all the people. Like, this was recent. This wasn't like.
Well, I don't know, because when Ronald Reagan was significantly older than them. So when he was born, Harriet Tubman was, I think, in her 80s, I think is what I read. So I don't know that she lived much. Let's see. I'm not sure how late she lived. But I think she died at like 91 or something like that. But either way, it's just like...
This wasn't as far back as we might want to make it. And a lot of these things, the legacy of the erasure of...
No, she died in 1913, so...
Harriet Tubman did?
Yeah, Harriet Tubman. So when was Ronald Reagan born? Because I saw this.
Yeah, it was probably...
He was 2 when she died.
Oh, Ronald Reagan was.
Ronald Reagan was 2 when Harriet Tubman died. Yeah.
What?
Yep. He was born in 1911. Here's something even crazier. So we're in 2025.
Yeah.
And we are currently dealing. So everyone talked about how rough the policies of the 80s are, but the way that government typically works, you may not feel the pressure of poor legislation
for years.
So we're currently living in the shadow of legislation that was written by someone who was born in 1911.
I mean, that's
more than 100 years.
That's mind-boggling when you actually think about that, and that's true. You know, because they haven't gone back and repealed those laws or even revisited a lot of them.
They're currently revisiting them and amping them
up, right? Yeah. They're not going back and saying, "Oh, let's do less of that." Right. And this was well before the end of Jim Crow.
Yeah.
Well before it, so
we hadn't even hit the Harlem Renaissance yet.
Yeah, I mean, so when you have a country, and this is what gets it for me. I have mostly white people. Some conservative black people say the same shit. They're like, want to equivocate about some of these things and want to make them less important or more whatever. But the point is that we're living in a country that codified in the law certain forms of racial unequalness and discrimination. That was codified into law.
Wow.
And it was just repealed in the 60s and 70s. So.
Jim Crow is defined by the good old internet. Roughly from the late 19th century to the mid 1960s. So, yeah. Okay. Donald Trump was born in 1946.
Yep. So he was a good 20 years old.
So the heyday of his life was Jim Crow. So when "Make America Great Again" isn't defined. Well, when he refuses to define it, yet you think about he's currently 79 years old. Many people of a certain age, many people in general, define their 20s as their heyday. As a heyday.
Yeah.
So when an 80-year-old says "Make America Great Again," and there's a whole lot of them, it's a reference to Jim Crow.
Definitely can be. Mm-hmm. And I take that, right?
Well, even if it's not, if it's
that's
10
still
years,
the context.
Yeah, even if it's the 10 years after that, the 10 years after that is the 70s, where it's segregation, it's police, it's no, it's not separate but equal, because it's the 70s, it's froze, it's a whole lot of there's black power,
right?
Yet we watch as the FBI and the police actually kill those leaders, kill, disenfranchise, criminalize, villainize those leaders. Mm-hmm. So, again,
there hasn't been enough time. And one thing that I keep thinking about is like, well, going back to the, damn it.
The Jillian Michaels?
No, not that. That's a part of, that's kind of the whole context of this, but the dehumanization of slaves. Mm-hmm. One thing I would recommend people listen to, and I might find it. I'm not going to promise it's going to be right away, but I will sit down at some point soon and try and find some of the old videos of Malcolm X's speeches. And I think they're for everybody. It's not just for black people. Like everybody could benefit from sitting down and listening to Malcolm X talk.
You probably won't have to try to find the old ones.
Well, no, I know where to get them. I'm looking for specific ones where he references the books that were written by white people where it talks about what they did to slaves. Mm. Because there was actually a manual. And there have been many manuals written by white people over the years about how to break the psyche of slaves. Mm-hmm. And what fascinated me, and I did not know this until
one of them is butt breaking, I believe.
Well, and I know they're the Willie Lynch letters, but I don't remember. I know about the Willie Lynch letters, and I don't remember if that was like a manual or what that was.
So but it turned out that it was a manual written as if it were
letters.
Yeah.
To like his son or somebody or whomever.
Whoever he wanted to send them to.
But yeah. So this was, and that's the infuriating part about it, is that like these things are on paper. And what fascinated me, and I didn't know this, and I would want to verify this, but this is going down the Instagram rabbit hole sometimes, where I heard, but I got this from multiple sources actually. It wasn't just one Instagram video. It was like the history of how in foreign countries that had melanized populations, how Europeans would come and they would make concerted efforts to demelanize the population in certain South American countries. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was like, it's a mission. It's like, this place is too melanized, so we're going to bring in Europeans. Mm-hmm. And even in America, and this wasn't melanization, but this was something much different about how Asians, Japanese, and I think Chinese people were invited and welcomed into the country and given a lot of resources that were not available to black people. And those resources could be used to buy property, build wealth, start businesses, etc.
It's literally, the crazy part is it's available to every immigrant group. And so it's part of the fuel of some of the things between Africans and African Americans, because if you can basically prove on paper, and they can, because they're clearly from another country. There are grants and different business things that are available, so immigrants can come into America and start businesses. Mm-hmm. And because of their cultural structure, it's just beneficial. And so, what's that guy, that comedian? Where's he? He's Indian. I can't remember. He makes jokes about
Azadi.
He makes jokes about tell me your last name. I'll tell you what kind of business you got. And so,
but that's interesting, because the way that it's presented sometimes is that the history of those programs, though, were to keep black people from being able to start businesses and have upper mobility in society.
Yeah, it was like it was a DEI with a racist tint to it.
In the reverse, away from it, in a way.
Well, no. So so we'll take DEI money to fund minority businesses, yet those minorities are immigrant populations, not
the minorities that are actually here.
Because my spiel in regards to it is there has to be an acknowledgement of the fact that in American history, how America was set up from colony to country, black people, and it's black people, it's not immigrants. Black people are to remain in servitude, and the only way to do that is to, one, erase culture. And it's interesting because even now there have continuously been attempts at erasure of culture within the black community. Yet, honestly, the only way black people have maintained our sanity in the midst of the things that we've gone through as a people is because our communities has been a safe place for us. And so that's something that has to endure, especially in the times that we're in now. Like it is as we watch the various raids on immigrant groups and things like that. It just gives me flashes of the dogs down in the South, the water hoses, things of that nature, and I believe that the goal is to reduce the immigrant population to attempt to put black people in more of a subjugated place. Since the repeal of DEI, I've heard it from multiple news sources that there are now about 30,000. I've heard it quoted as 30,000. I've also heard it quoted as 300. I think that we would have to wait until the end of the year to actually have the real number as to what it is. But at least 30,000 black women without jobs, where they've lost their jobs because, you're a DEI hire.
Well, he's trying to fire the Fed, one of the Fed, the first black woman on the Fed board.
I believe Linda something.
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately, while I've met many black people that kind of have a blanket problem with white people, I would say that most people have a frustration with one mouth, two ears, listen, understand, have some empathy and compassion for a situation that may not be understood well by others. And just because it's not your experience doesn't mean that it's not somebody else's experience. And so I love everybody, right? Yet listening to some of these things are very frustrating because you can't fix somebody's head if they don't. You can't fix or develop an understanding or an accord with somebody that doesn't want to treat you as an equal and treat your experience as just as valid as theirs. And that's the real crux of it. And then on top of that, when their experience is typically when I find it's great when you find white people that understand. They can be the best friends, best allies ever, because they at least are making an effort to understand something. But when you're dealing with somebody that just doesn't want to understand or just thinks that they're right, when the facts actually just don't even, just like with Jillian Michaels, it's like when you look at the facts and you look at things in context, and you're not just looking at the kindergarten Cliff Notes version, but you're looking at the actual history of what was going on at the time, even her numbers don't add up.
Yeah.
But the level of righteousness is appalling.
It is a victim. It's a white victimhood.
Absolutely.
And I would say that it's a white victimhood that has probably been brewing since we've been singing Kumbaya. You know, honestly.
Well, yeah.
So when I say that, I mean like after watching Rodney King get beat on national TV, there was a more concerted effort to shift. And I believe that we did shift for a while. And we kept shifting and we kept shifting and we kept shifting. And in the midst of that shifting, the white people who were not comfortable, who had questions, they chose to bury their questions instead of ask them.
Well,
and I mean, because it's white victimhood is what it is. Why should I be held accountable for slavery? Who is walking around holding you accountable for slavery? Nobody. I don't. What are you talking about?
Nobody. Like, and that's even like that's just it. Like you just like nobody's holding. Like where did you hear that? Because that's kind of not a thing.
It's not among black people.
No,
we really don't.
We don't think
about it like that
at all.
But if you want to feel guilty for your own, if you want to feel guilty because you decided to do, what is it, 23andMe? Is that the one?
That's one of the DNA tests where it shows you where you came from.
Well, not where you came from, but where the trace my roots. What's that website?
Henry Louis Gates?
Ancestry.com. If you just decided you wanted to go to Ancestry.com and you find out that your fifth uncle 5 times removed, or your cousins, or whoever, was a slave owner, and you now carry guilt around that, that's for you to work out. That's a victim mentality that you have to figure out within yourself. That's not... Black people don't owe you acknowledgement of you didn't own slaves. We know you didn't own slaves.
And I don't think I don't think that person owes a black person acknowledgement like I don't own slaves. But what I will say, and this is where it gets extremely nuanced, and you get into big picture really thinking in a way. Like I don't think it's that big, but to some it is, right? It's like slavery was the economy as this country was founded, and it was the economy. It was amazing. And one thing that blew me away, I just never thought of it, but the banks at the time during the slave trade were located in the North. New York was always the banking center of the country. Well, not always, but it became that very early on. Mm-hmm. And so the slaveholders who had slaves who were running this whole economy off of slavery were putting them in banks that were located in the North. And so a lot of this energy of like, okay, was the country, like where was the country at that time in terms of how to treat black people? It's like, yeah, everybody profited from it. Everyone profited from it. Whether they primarily owned slaves or not, it was a major driver in the economy. And just do the math, right? Anybody that has a business knows that labor is one of the most expensive and the most volatile parts of any company. That's part of why even today people's jobs are getting replaced by computers constantly, is because when it comes to people or a computer, computers are always going to, well, generally speaking, computers are going to be more reliable than people. That's why even with AI being proliferating right now and replacing people's jobs, because you could have somebody that just decides not to come into work, they could get sick, whatever the things are, and that's a real thing for a business. And so when you can just be the master and have this group of people that had to do what you say, that's like the pipe dream for anybody who owns a business. And so this idea of slavery at the time probably sounded like a great idea, whether it was or wasn't. Mm-hmm. And so that whole idea was a part of the American culture, regardless of whether or not there was a war fought over the economy at that time that happened to include slavery, right? it was still a major driver in a lot of things, and the people, you might have had the direct slave owners who were a small number of people, but the economy that they were in charge of was a huge part of the Southern economy.
Well, something that's important to note, it wasn't always that slavery was illegal in the North. There were slaves in the North. There were slaves in the North who did all kinds of skilled trade, and so they did ironwork. They did all kinds of different things. So every business there wasn't a part. So America's wealth was built on the slave trade, and it's not the trade. It wasn't about the trade of slaves. It's that it was just the free labor. And bankers had people who worked as calculators. It wasn't. There's nothing. There seamstresses. Any job that was done by a person that was paid, there was also someone beside them that was unpaid, and truthfully, at that time, black people were the AI, because if you could have a slave instead of having a paid person,
you pick a slave.
You pick a slave.
I mean, why? I mean, if you're a business and that's a part of your economy or your culture, why wouldn't you do that? And black people at that time were not able to participate in the economy because they were slaves. And so the legacy of that doesn't just go away because a group of men get in the room and say, we're not going to do that anymore. That doesn't even pass a lab test. Like, the legacy of that, and even the wealth gap that's built based on that system, is going to take just as long to come out of as it did to get into it. So we're talking hundreds of years. And I know that number is probably baffling to some people and way bigger than anybody could think, because people think that all this shit out here is just fair and just set up where everybody can participate equally, and that's just not the truth.
So, end of slave trade, end of slavery, where the hell? I thought it was. So 1865.
Yeah.
So add 400 years to that.
Yep. 1965, 2065,
21.
3065. No, 2165.
22.
2265.
2265.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, even looking right now, it's like, oh, okay. So, makes sense. So as we look at what we're currently going through, if we just go back 100 years, that's Jim Crow.
About, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were in Jim Crow. We were in the middle of Jim Crow at that time. Because Jim Crow didn't get repealed until the 60s. So, I mean, and the 60s was not that long ago. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't. I'm like,
people born in the 60s are not yet 60.
Well,
unless
that's
I was like,
wow.
Because I was thinking about my mom. I'm like, she's not 60.
Well, and the other parts of this that's also super interesting to me, that's kind of it's an adjacent conversation, or maybe tangential, but ultimately it's like, when we talk about the attitudes that people have about black people, and even the Hispanic people that are and South Americans, and all the people that are in the country that aren't white, but especially people from black people in South Americans, because those are the immigrants that we seem to really have an issue with. Like, we're not deporting Europeans like this. Like, we're not searching for illegal, Irishmen or English people or people from Spain.
No, like, that's the only time they get deported is if they speak out about Trump.
Yeah, I mean, but outside of that, we don't see raids in cities, and and putting them and sending them to Alligator Alcatraz or anything. We see people being sent there, mostly from South America, and what the something I just think about all the time is like, when we think about how we exert our authority with laws and this fetish we have with the police and law enforcement and order and all these things, it's like I like the police more than some people and less than others. I'm in the middle of the road. I'm like, Stop. I don't want to create an issue for a police officer. I don't want them creating an issue for me. Sing kumbaya and move on with our lives. That's not how I feel about it. I don't think all police officers are the enemy, but I do think it's a job that can attract people that like when the authority of a police officer is misused, it's a real problem for everybody. And one of the things that it kind of alongside of that really is deep in my psyche about this is that everybody in their lives, regardless of what they look like, color of their skin, whatever, they have periods of their life where they do stupid shit. Like teenagers do some stupid shit. When you're in college, you do stupid shit. Like we were just talking recently about, it's good for people when they graduate high school to go to college because that's the place
where it's
safe to do stupid shit. Mm-hmm. And so I even remember hearing stories many years ago about kids even that I went to high school with that just did stupid shit. But if you were a person, especially a person of color in this country, and you do stupid shit and you're not treated the same way as a white person who does stupid shit, then that stupid shit that you do can ruin your life, like permanently. And I know some people like even from high school where it was like, oh my God, like you're going and stealing shit. You're like even a situation with a firearm that came up, and it's like, if these kids were judged on their actions right now, when they're hormonal and they're stupid, and that becomes their life, then what kind of society are we actually propagating? A lot of these, especially white people, that are law and order and have this fear or attitude of like, even with the immigrants, like they didn't follow the law. It's like, it's not that I don't think the laws are important, but it's like once you say that, right? What's the actual situation that's happening for people? And why are you so attached to this rule that you're not able to see past it and around it? Because I promise in your history, or in the history of somebody who's close to you, there's a moment where they were at a crossroads, and if somebody decided to go with the letter of the law, their lives could have been ruined. So that's a situation that's universal for most people. And even if you behaved perfectly, it could be one of your parents and you didn't know about it. It could be your brother, sister, cousin, friend, whatever, who were caught up in a situation, and they needed the conscience of the legal system to come into play. And what that looks like is the officer or the prosecutor or the judge that looks at the situation and says, you know what? This kid or this situation is this. I'm comfortable with handling it like this. We don't need to ruin this person's life or existence or what have you over a stolen cookie or Snickers bar or something like that or whatever the fuck it was. It's like they didn't kill anybody. Nobody was hurt. Everybody around the table is good. We can move on. And looking at what's happening today, part of what is really infuriating to watch is that whole system getting dismantled because people have bright ideas about how the border works and how people that don't look like them should be treated. Because let me be clear, you don't see, there are illegal people from every country in the world, in this country, right now.
All the time.
All of the time. And one of my favorite shows Like I go on YouTube and watch the border security show. It's a while, like it's just entertaining to watch. And it's not anything that's major, but you see like what happens at the border, what they're actually talking about and what they're actually looking for. And one of the things like in the context of what's happening in America right now that's fascinating about watching the show is this happens in every freaking country. If you have a country with resources, especially United States, Canada, and the other country that this show takes place in is Australia, and there might be other countries I'm not aware of, but ultimately there are always people in the country. They're always overstaying. Folks are always like it's a part of having a country, right? And having a country that's attractive for people to come to. And so if we're getting all bent out of shape all the time, where I was actually going with that is that best believe all kinds of Europeans in this country illegally right now overstayed their visa, hanging out in somebody's basement or in their house, or even fully out in the open in a hotel and paying for the hotel and just being here, you know? And
I was gonna say, fully in relationships, living a whole life.
All day. It happens all of the time. And while it's important to know who's in the country and who isn't, it's important to make sure the people that are in the country are solid people, because you see that happen all the time too. Like people trying to go to Canada, and they actually look up their records because they can tell when they're entering like what they did, and they're like, yeah, bro, we can't let you in here. You committed this offense and this offense and this offense. We don't want you in our country. They send them packing. And so these are things that happen that as a country we've always known how to deal with. So now we're in a place where we're acting like we don't know how to do stuff when we do. And we're in a place where it's clear that the people that are being targeted aren't the Europeans that are sitting here.
Well, my thing is this. I saw a video of a woman she was at a bodega in New York, and it was another white woman. She was practicing her Spanish because she's learning Spanish to go travel abroad. She went off on the woman. Speak English. You could be talking about me. And I was just like, that's literally our country right now. Sorry, white people, it's y'all, but it's not.
We don't care.
I'm like, it's y'all. Like y'all believe that y'all are important. And I don't mean all of y'all. I just mean that the instance, like there is, because when I think, so my biggest pet peeve is people in the Midwest talking about illegal immigrants. I'm like, where is the border that you're worried about? What border are you worried about? Are you worried? And I was outside of a restaurant waiting for my son to come out of Cordova, and I saw these 3 Mexican guys. They had on they were construction workers because they had on the construction gear. And they were just happily walking up the street to go get some food, and I was just like, and it was around lunchtime, so I'm like on their lunch break, whatever, and I'm looking at them, and I'm like, I'm happy for their joy. Like, man, they did some hard work. They about to get some good food, you know. And I look at them and I think, and I'm like, this is literally what we're fighting against right now. People being so miserable in their own life that they're upset at someone who doesn't look like them expressing joy in existence.
And having a job. Yeah.
Like, because as I'm smiling watching them, I see white people around like looking at them like, you don't belong here. And I'm just like, oh, it's rough out here in these streets to exist.
And the fact that that's a tone now, because that, I'm not going to say that there hasn't always been an air of that, but I feel like there's not only an air of it, but it's magnified and people have gotten more comfortable. and the thing about it is, one of the things that's part of leadership is setting the tone for the people that are under your leadership or that you're leading, right? Mm-hmm. And when you have a president that feels comfortable with speaking a certain way and addressing people a certain way, then part of what happens, whether you like it or not, is that the leader's comfortable with saying that, so this is now the standard for how this is to be said. Mm-hmm. And it's not always about picking up, it's not all about raising arms and having a direct fight, but it is about the change of tone and how people are addressed, and then the consequences of that change in tone. Because the second that you start looking at those people like, why are they here, right? And even with all of this tenor, like, oh, every city now there's a big problem, a crime problem, even though crime is being reduced in most of these cities. Every city
has been on a downward trend
for
30 years.
For 30 years. And now all of a sudden, National Guard and necessary don't even know the cities to come in and do something. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. But I digress. This idea now, as we're talking, like, oh my God, everywhere there's this crime problem, the immigrants, whatever. And the one thing I'll say to everybody, this is black and white people, is that you got to watch when you've got a leader up there that's not supporting your peace inside of you, mm-hmm. but that is creating a volatile and energized energy in you. Because unless there's an actual war, and I'm sure that some people will try and spin all of this into we're in a fight right now that we have to win, but the war that I'm talking about is literally people walking down the street with guns and trying to shoot you or hurt you or something like that. It's like that level. That's the only reason why your nervous system should be charged right now. Mm-hmm. If it's charged because of something that's going on thousands of miles away, I would ask yourself, why are we even talking about this when I need a job? Like, that's the question I would be asking. Because the other thing is, I used to live in a border city. I used to live in San Diego, which is right on the border of Tijuana. San Diego and Tijuana are on the border of each other, Tijuana, Mexico. And people that live in border cities, regardless of red state, blue state, whatever, mm-hmm. they know these things, and they don't think about the border in this way.
In the same way.
They just don't.
Yeah.
It's like people that live in border cities cross the border to have lunch. I'm not even kidding. It's a thing.
They actually do everything.
They do, right. Yeah. Like in San Diego, you had Mexicans that would come up to the United States to go to the mall, and then they would go home. Yeah. So they would come spend money here in the country, put money in our economy,
and go home.
And then they would go home. They would just drive right across the border. They weren't trying to stay, right? And you would see this every single effing day.
And I was going to say, in El Paso, people will cross from Juarez into El Paso. They would walk across the bridge because it's literally businesses on both sides.
Yep.
They can walk across the bridge and go to work and go back home.
Right.
Because, why not come over here, make more money, go back home, less expensive? Like, and it's, what's interesting about it is I don't understand. Well, I do. Unfortunately, I do understand. In places such as Washington, D.C., people live in West Virginia. They live all around it.
DC is very complicated in that regard because you've got DC proper, but you've got DC is tiny, and then a lot of the population, I don't know what most is, I don't want to say most, but a lot of people will live in Baltimore, they'll live in West Virginia,
they live PG,
in Virginia.
Well, yeah, and Virginia, PG County, like it's so the people who want more space, like a more natural, peaceful, slower life, they'll go to West Virginia because their money buys more.
And there's more space available. Yeah.
And then you have lower state taxes and things of that nature. And like So the people who don't understand that concept, my feel on the situation is people who don't have that opportunity. Because if you actually understood, like, hey, you live here, you drive an hour, if not more, to go here and work, and you bring that money back into this economy, because that's actually how our economy works. Yet, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I do know.
I mean,
it's just
you have to be open to thinking differently about something. You have to be open to, and this, like, we can take this full circle and close this out. This started out with me talking about Jillian Michaels, and I'm like, okay, I was a huge fan of The Biggest Loser. I watched almost every season, if not every season. I was a fan of Jillian. Like, she was just entertaining to watch, and she seemed to get results. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of controversy at the end, but it's like, okay, you got results. I was never mad at Jillian Michaels, but Jillian, you were a fitness trainer. And essentially, this reminds me of one of the age-old tropes. You get somebody who isn't really qualified to talk about a topic. You dress them up in a suit, put some makeup, fix their hair, send them out, and tell them they got some authority to talk about something, and they assume they do, and they start talking. And that's a huge way to delude the truth of what's actually happening. Mm-hmm. And it's happening around us all the time, which means that we have to really put a lot more energy into filtering it out and finding out what the truth actually is. Mm-hmm. And that's my challenge to white people and black people, because a lot of black people don't know the history. They don't know what happened. Like, read the Willie Lynch letters. Yeah. Listen to some, and I'll find them. Because Malcolm X, he talks about, and he names the letters. That's what it is. Because there were books written about the deconstruction of the psyche of black people, of Africans, when they were brought over to the diaspora. And I don't want to speak in this podcast about the truth of what happened, but it is something that is the way that they dismantled the psyche of those people. It's shocking that they survived, and it is so horrific that you will don't eat before you read the book, if you choose to read it, and that's a challenge.
And that's a major challenge, because a page might take, you might read it and you're like, okay, I'm gonna put this down.
Yeah, because it's awful.
Yeah.
And it's awful. And it's a challenge to you, because don't assume that you know what's going on here. Don't assume you know what happened. And you can educating yourself about something has to be a choice, and it takes a certain level of humility. It takes a certain level of, hey, I may not know what's going on here as well as I think I do, so I'm gonna go find out what's happening, and I'm gonna go read some books. And incidentally, that's part of why these books are being banned, because they don't want people to know. Mm-hmm. Like that, it's a thing, right? So.
In regards to the book banning, it's even more insidious than the book banning. It's even to the point of, when you go to look, think of something popular. Think of something that you may have read in high school, something like that, and go and just Google it to see if you can find it. There are things like, there's books that have natural herbs in them that talk about old wives' remedies and things of that nature. So whenever I see the preppers I follow a lot of the various preppers for online, like on Instagram, and because they're like, you need to have this book, and every time, and I'll go and I'll look for the book, and I'll be like, man, I can't find the book. things are happening where there's not even as much conversation, because we're not going to talk about banning books that have natural herbs that can cure colds and things of that nature. We're just going to slowly phase them out because they weren't selling enough.
Right.
And so, so you may have a hard time finding some of these various things. You may only be able to find references to it. It's not.
It might not be easy.
It's not necessarily going to be easy. Yeah, educating yourself is not easy.
It's not, and it requires a choice.
It does, and I'll end my end thought will be extremely controversial. I will say that in the last 30 years, if not even longer than that, our education system has been completely dismantled in a way where educating is not the goal. Which education was never truly the goal. The goal was to make workers. Yet there was because I was fortunate. I had some great teachers, and I talk about them. I mention it all the time. I think a big part of me having some great teachers were that some of them were expats. Some of my teachers were expats, so they left the United States and was like, I ain't doing this ish no more. I'm going to only talk about what's important to me. So they were within the system. They were within a system that allowed them that freedom. So I learned, and even in Baltimore, I got to learn from mathematicians and historians and things. Either way, all of that to say, our education system is not, and if you have children in it, know this. Our education system has been eroded in such a way where educating our children is not the primary function of that. So it is important for you to educate yourself so that you can figure out how to educate your children.
And my closing thought in all of this is that peace takes work, and it can be really hard. And peace in this situation, in my opinion, is not everybody just genuflect to what's happening because these are the people in charge and they just do what they say. Like, that's not peaceful. That's actually another form of chaos. Peace right now, and what I personally think is happening, is that people are going to be put to a decision about what they think. You, me, Jillian Michaels, Roland Marlin, who we talked about. Mm-hmm. Everybody's going to be put to a decision about what kind of world they want to create and what kind of world they live in. And I prefer to live in a world where everybody has a fair shake. And that's a very elusive thing. And is like, even what that means is very elusive, but it's real. It's like everybody has a fair shake. And for those, especially white people, but anybody that wants to have a full breadth of understanding about what's going on in the country right now, you have to look at the totality of the history. And that's from the diaspora moving forward, because that is the creation of this country. That is the creation of what we're witnessing happening around us right now. And even to the foreign people who might listen to this, like, y'all who are hundreds of years older or thousands of years older than America, y'all had your crazy periods too. We're entitled to ours. Mm-hmm. And we will get through it, right? Like we will get through it. But to the Jillian Michaels of the world, I'm like, you need to stop talking. And I don't mean that to be rude, but I do mean it. And open up your ears and actually listen. Because these conversations matter. Like, not assuming that you have it right matters. And learning the full breadth of what happens matters. And then, if you actually listen to the whole story and you still sit there as a white person thinking, oh my God, this, because ultimately, right, it's that the end result, the ultimate white privilege is the privilege not to have to think about these things. That's what it is. It's not anything active that you do. It's that you can live your life, you can get up every morning, you can go to work, You can go home, and outside of being inundated with it on the news now, because that's a choice that somebody made to talk about it, not something that has to happen. But outside of that, you don't have to think about much of anything having to do with people that don't look like you. But what I promise you is that everybody that doesn't look like you has to think about you. Mm-hmm. Just to survive. Mm-hmm. And that's what ultimately white privilege looks like in practice. So, saying all that to say, I think we've subscribe, share, comment, do all the things. And thank you for listening. Peace out, everybody.
Have a good one, y'all.